Welcome to episode 105 of How About Them Huskies. As always, I'm your host, Connor. Joined by Matt and Andrew and UConn. The Huskies, after that Maui slide, they continue to keep on rolling. Their sixth consecutive win. They beat Butler. They're now 2-0 in Big East play. It was a bit of an iffy win. The Huskies were up big. Butler came back, but never really came back fully. UConn was in control for most of the game. We'll start there, recapping that one, and afterwards having a little bit of Christmas fun. This is our last episode before Christmas. We're gonna play a little game after the recap, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But we'll start with this Butler recap, and I just want to give you guys the floor here because this is a game I don't miss many, but this is one I kind of was watching on and off, so I didn't really catch the full gist of it. I saw a lot of the beginning, didn't I missed a lot when Butler was coming back. What was your guys' thoughts of this one? Obviously, Hinkle Fieldhouse, even though we always tend to beat Butler, it's always a tough place to play.
Yeah, it was just another hard fought game. Like you said, when you missed it when Butler's come back, just a couple of stupid mistakes. Not great shot selection. Some that definitely should have gone in. I know Diarra had one that was pretty much halfway down and just didn't go in. But I think we were kind of lucky to escape with that one because we got out to a huge start. I believe it was 14-2 was the start we got out to, and then Butler kind of evened things. They did eventually end up taking the lead. And I just feel like we were kind of lucky to escape with that one. Sampson was back. He looked good. Terrace Reed fouled out again. I feel like that may end up being a common theme this season, but I feel like we are just kind of lucky to escape with that win.
Yeah, we didn't play good. I'll put it that simple. We didn't play up to our standard, but they somehow managed to play worse, and that's ultimately why we came out with the win. Just extremely inefficient, 27 of 60 from the field, and the guys you needed to step up, Caravan, 7 of 16, solo ball, 2 of 8. McNeely a little bit better, around 35-40%, but overall, I mean, there's definitely room to improve here. First road game in the Big East, so good floor to start at, a nice win against Butler, but overall, you look to improve certain things. You mentioned the fouls from Terrace. You want to see that dissipate, especially with, Samson always being in foul trouble as well. Great game from him, but um, there's positives, but I felt like overall this was kind of a negative game.
Yeah, good to see Sampson to come back. I know we made our opinions clear. I didn't think he'd be back for this game with the long break before the next one against DePaul. I thought it'd be smarter to give him a rest, but he looked good when he was out there, but he wasn't out there much, like you said, Matt. Two early fouls, but he got 6 points before he got those two fouls, so pretty efficient. He only played 16 minutes in this one. Terrace, I know, was dealing with, I believe, a sickness or an illness, something like that. They said he almost didn't play, so he gave it his all there, but yeah. It's kind of surprising that he wasn't really in foul trouble last game against Xavier, but he fouled out in this one with Sampson back. So I guess I'd rather him foul out in a game where we have our starting center, Sampson. If he fouled out in that Xavier game, he may have been in a little bit of trouble. But yeah, Solo Ball is a name I want to really touch on first, next, however you want to call it, because he had his worst game of the season, and he is going to have games like this. 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from three. The defense is still a work in progress. He had 4 fouls. It's just Solo, he basically won us that Xavier game with those 22 points, that personal 8-0 run. You're going to get that solo. You're also going to get a solo like this, hopefully not often, not as often, seeing it's the first time it's really happened all year, where he's not going to really produce much offensively from three inside. No one really did much inside. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But I mean, what's your guys' thoughts on Solo? Because I feel like he's obviously going to be fine, but this is a performance. If he even knocked down two or three of those threes, you're looking at a comfortable double-digit win here.
Yeah, he had his Tristan Newton St. John's game. I hate saying this because he's a fantastic player, fantastic person, but he was basically a non-factor in this game. Just his defense, like Connor said, is still a work in progress, and then 2 for 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from three, which is really rare because his 3-point shot has gotten so much better this year. But yeah, unfortunately, in that game against Butler, he was kind of a non-factor. But then again, I'm not mad at him because, like Connor said, he had 22 points against Xavier, basically won us that game. But yeah, this one he was basically a non-factor. Rough game, but everybody's going to have those.
Now, this is an interesting topic to me, at least, because we have a guy on the bench who I feel like could easily slot in and pick up that role when he is not up to standard, and that's Aiden Mahaney. I feel like Hurley's really trying to make it so that he's more of a Diarra backup, which he isn't. He's a solo ball backup. He's just as good of a scorer, if not better of a scorer than solo ball. I feel like, if solo ball is having an off night, you can easily slot Mahaney in there and he could be just as effective. And you saw it a little bit this game where he wasn't as ball dominant. Sure, he brought it up, but he wasn't really running the offense. He had 7 points. He shot 3 of 4. I thought he played a pretty effective role. If you could, I mean, we expect a little more to 7 points from him, but where he's been recently, it's good to see anything. You want to just see improvement from where he has been, and I think this was definitely it. It was a little reminiscent of the Baylor game. Overall, you want him to come in and you want him to score off the bench. And he's not going to do that as a point guard. He's not a shot creator. He's not a ball handler. So if you could get him in there and kind of play him off ball in a way that you play solo, I'm sure he could be very successful.
Well, the big thing with Aiden, I feel like, is him actually playing off the bench. We saw in that Xavier game and other games, he played what, 2, 3 minutes, and that was it because Diarra took up the other 37, or I guess it was 42 because that game went to overtime. But I'm looking at his game log here since he left the starting lineup and joined the bench. In games where he plays at least 10 minutes off the bench, which was this Butler game, the Baylor game, which he did well, and the Maryland Eastern Shore game, which obviously take that with a grain of salt. But in those games, he put up 11, 9, and 7. In every other game he's came off the bench, he's only scored one basket in 4 games, 2 points. That's what, 0.5 points per game when he plays less than 10 minutes off the bench. I feel like the staff is starting to notice that because Mahaney definitely got some more run in this one against Butler and looked solid. 3 for 4, hit his only three, 7 points. Just I feel like we're going to see more of him as the season goes on, especially maybe with this winter break, a week plus off without games. Definitely maybe develop him, hopefully into more of, like you said, a solo ball backup because I don't think he is a Hassan Diarra backup. Hopefully, this is maybe the turning point for Hurley and the staff, and they're realizing that they were wrong about their assumptions of what he can do, which isn't a bad thing because I'd rather you admit your mistake and put him in the position to succeed, and it clearly looked like he was in that position against Butler.
Yeah, I need to see more of what he did in that game. He had some beautiful cuts for layups for 4 of his 7 points, and then obviously the three. And he just looked more like Joey Calcaterra out there. And I feel like that's what they need to mirror him as because he's not a point guard. He doesn't handle the ball. I mean, I feel like Joey hardly ever dribbled the basketball when he was here. And Mahaney looked great against Butler. And I think that that was one of his best games of the year so far. And I just feel like that's what we need to see more of. We don't need to see him trying to do everything, run the offense around him, like nothing like that. We just need to have him play his role and play exactly like he did against Butler.
And Connor and I were at that Xavier Big East opener. All of us were actually, but we were sitting together, which is why I mentioned that in that same kind of area where we sat that certain St. John's game a few years back where we were hearing everything about Dan Hurley in there. This was before he had even won a single national title. A single tournament game that is too. So we lost that game against that, not so great St. John's team. And we had a lot to hear about Dan Hurley in there. A lot of people wanted him gone. A lot of people blamed him for all the failure that we had had. And after that, we saw obviously the back-to-back national championships and the complete renaissance of Dan Hurley. This game, there was a lot of Aiden Mahaney slander from what I heard. I heard a lot of people in the back saying they can't stand Aiden Mahaney, that he's not good, that he's, not capable of playing for UConn. And I'm just hoping, we follow a similar trend here where this is becoming such a noticeable thing that it just starts to turn around. Obviously, we saw those back-to-back national championships after all that slander that first time. So I'm hoping after all this Aiden Mahaney slander, he can, come back and shut all these people up because it's so annoying hearing your own fan base kind of talk trash about one of your own players. You want to root for him and you want him to do well. I find it a little annoying that, people could just so quickly prey on his downfall, and I just don't find that cool.
And one thing I noticed, and you're totally right, I did hear Aiden Mahaney's name thrown around quite a few times in that Xavier game, and he played 3 minutes, so it certainly wasn't about his play on the court. But I catch these little things. I don't know if you guys caught it. He's clean shaven for that game versus Butler. 7 points. Maybe that's a new trend for him. I don't know, maybe a little quirky thing like that. But yeah, to your point, I maybe closing this point on Mahaney. He is a guy who's going to have big games for us. He's had big games for us. That Baylor game, he's had his big moments at Gamble. He's going to have more big moments at Excel and Gamble, even on the road, like this game was on the road. You just got to be patient with him. If he's not what we're saying he's going to be by like mid-February, maybe it's time to admit we were wrong, but that's still 2 months away, a month and a half plus away. I feel like as long as he's who we think he's going to be by March, that's really all that matters at the end of the day for this team. He could continue struggling potentially, maybe not play as much, but if you guys remember, Joey I believe it was we did a live stream during that Seton Hall game 2 years ago. Joey was a DNP coach's decision that game, and how clutch is he in that NCAA tournament for us? So even if they're not getting the run you expect them to get, or probably deserve to get in the conference, non-conference, whatever you want to call it, the March is what's most important for UConn. That's the standard we've reached at this point, and I feel like Mahaney is going to be a massive part of this team come March. Moving on, we haven't really talked too much about the big duo, Caravan and McNeely. They led us. Caravan had 21, McNeely 17. He went 5 of 13 from the field, 3 of 3 from deep, which means he went 2 of 10 inside the arc, which is certainly not what you want to see. Andre Screen, the Butler big man, had quite a day. I was a little bit confused, perplexed, I feel like it's a good word to use here, because we got off to that red hot start, 27-12 at the under 12 timeout. And we just pretty much stopped shooting threes and kept on driving it into the 7 foot screen, and he was blocking everything. So I don't know why they just went away from that. That's part of the reason why Butler got back into the game. I don't know why they like Jaden Ross hit a three, Caravan hit one, and during that stretch, McNeely, everyone was hitting them except Solo, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I don't know why they went away from those threes, and it allowed Butler to come back into the game.
That also really confused me because the inside game was never going to happen against Screen because he was dominating everybody unless you went to the center. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why we went away from the threes that were working. Maybe it was just letting the foot off the gas, thinking we don't need threes or we're going to be up 40, and then they ended up taking the lead eventually. So that didn't really work out. But yeah, Caravan won us that game. Honestly, I think that his clutch playmaking and shot making was what won us that game. You know, McNeely's going to have nights like that where he's just not going to be on from inside the arc, but he's going to make winning plays. You know, my biggest issue with basketball is everybody worries about the box score, and the people that don't actually watch the game are like, "Oh, he had this many points. You know, what a letdown of a game. He went 2 for 10. What a letdown of a game." You know, not everything's about scoring and in the box score. You know, McNeely made a lot of really good plays during that game that led to baskets for us or great plays on defense. So I'm not going to say McNeely played bad. I think he also helped win us that game, but Caravan's shot making was definitely what won us that game.
And I mentioned earlier that this was a pretty inefficient game for us, only 45% from the field. We shot 45% total from three as well. You mentioned why we stopped shooting. I really have no idea. If you get rid of solo balls 0 for 5, we shot 57, 58% from three, which is a complete outlier. It didn't make any sense, especially running into screen. How tall is he? I need to see. He's 7'1". We don't have anybody really that's competing with that. Terrace is strong and Sampson's big, but not as big. You're not going over the top of him, but it really made no sense. And I don't want to see that trend continue. I want to see these guys continue to shoot. The way we were shooting, we should have shot 35 threes. I'll put it that way. That game should have never been close. And Caravan did have a successful game. His shot making towards the end was important. But 7 of 16, I don't want to see that from him anymore. And McNeely, 5 of 13, you could definitely get better. McNeely actually did not miss a three of three. So going forward, you want to see these guys continue their hot streaks. It doesn't make any sense to stop.
And with Screen, he had 17 and 10. That's a career, or at least, no, not career, because he had a very successful career at Bucknell. But since he got to Butler last year, most points he's had in the game, 17. Most rebounds he's had in the game, 10. First time he's had a double-digit rebounding game. So it's his first double-double, easily his best game as a Bulldog happens to come against the Huskies, which that team tends to happen a lot, I feel like, in Big East play. Kadari Richmond, obviously a very talented player, but I feel like he was setting career highs every time he played us. He had 8 steals in that game that the Pirates beat us last year. There's always those type of players all around the Big East. We'll certainly run into a couple more, maybe even one in that DePaul game coming up. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, we emphasized the big three for Butler in our preview and trying to limit them. Jameel Telfor only had 7 points. Pierre Brooks only 13. McCaffrey did get 17, but they only took a combined, they each went 1 for 3 from three. So the trio went 3 for 9 from deep as a unit. So I feel like that's certainly a success there because outside of that, I mean, you don't expect Screen to get 17. That's probably the main reason they were in this game, but not much. Colby King, 9 points, Landon Moore, 8, not much outside of that. But moving on, we'll talk a little bit about Hassan Diarra, and I think when we wrap up on this game, because he continues to impress, in my opinion, as the starting point guard of this team. Only 7 assists in this one, and I say only, that's a lot of assists, but I've been averaging more than that since he entered the starting lineup. 12 points, some big shots, 2 of 3 from deep. Good to see that because he's a guy who's had 0 for 5 games like Solo did in this one. He's had 1 for 6 games. So to see him make 2 of 3 is huge. 4 rebounds, just solidifying that point guard position, a position that I feel like at this point, there's no reason to even have any concern over.
Yeah, he's definitely been fantastic. I like to think that he's, truly a game changer. It's just hard for me to fully believe it when he's playing 35 minutes a game this year. Um, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna, trash on him or anything, but in his past 5 games, 27, 35, 36, 42, 32. Granted, we've won all 5 of those games. So, maybe that is something, but it's kind of hard for me to believe that he's like a full-time starter. He's putting up these numbers in 30 minutes. But he's been fantastic. 6.2 assists is top 25 in the country. 8.3 points is honestly more than I expected from him. Given what he did the past 2 years, he was kind of a streaky scorer guy. He's doing it consistently here. Hopefully he can get up to 10 plus a game by the end of the year. So I'm really happy to see him doing well and the team following suit. Like I mentioned, the past 5 games where he's played 30 minutes, they're 5-0. So really nothing to complain about. But I do want to see him take that next step if you kind of feel what I mean.
We've had the California Kid, we've got the Grizzly Bear, we had the Energizer Bunny, and now we've got the General, and that's Hassan Diarra. He is the general of this team. He is the guy at the front. He's not necessarily the best player on the team, but he's the general. Everything runs through him. He's the fifth year guy. I think the only fifth year guy on this team, if I remember correctly. I think he's the only fifth year guy on this team, but he leads this team. If there were to be a team captain, I think that it would be him. You don't really see captains in basketball, really, but I think if there was a captain, it would be him. And I think he's great in the starting position. Some of his shots at the end of the shot clock, sure, they're not the most quality shots per se, but I'd rather have him try to look for a shot like that than have somebody chuck up a three. But yeah, only saying only is funny because it's a lot of assists, but 7 assists. He's a fantastic playmaker, and I feel like he's going to be our most important player down the stretch in March this year. But I really liked what I saw out of him again, and he keeps getting better.
And you mentioned those into the shot clock shots. They're usually decent shots. They're usually open. He's not just chucking up shots behind his head. Um, which kind of leads me to think, why not just give him the first 10 seconds of the shot clock to kind of look for something, and if that doesn't work, then get into your set. I feel like you're running it a little backwards here with, just having him try and bail us out. You don't need to do that. He's a really good shot creator. He's a really good playmaker, and I feel like if you kind of let him do that earlier, then you won't have to worry as much because I know you have sets to get Caravan or McNeely open within seconds. So maybe let Haas run that offense a little bit more, give it a little bit more, of that Haas touch, and maybe we'll see some more success.
Yeah, I got 2 more things to talk about, and then we'll move on to that fun Christmas exercise I was talking about. And I was listening to the Field of 68, their After Dark, I know, rival podcast, What Am I Doing? But they were talking, I wanted to, because like I said, I missed the second half pretty much of that UConn game. I wanted to hear what they had to say, Rob Doster, John Fana, and Randolph Childress. And one of them brought up a great point talking about UConn and how the past couple of years, we've had at least 2 ball handlers on the floor, like in the starting lineup at all times. I remember 2 years ago, Tristan Newton, Andre Jackson's a guy. He's basically a point guard at 6'6", playing our small forward. Last year, Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton, Stephon Castle. This year, it's Hassan Diarra. But after that, I mean, solo ball, I don't know if I really trust him too much handling the ball in big situations. Caravan and McNeely, especially McNeely, I feel like kind of are growing into that role. But looking at all the past champions, I feel like even our past champions in 2014, Shabazz and Boatwright, those are 2 point guards playing side by side, obviously pretty small. Kemba and Shabazz wasn't a starter on that team, but he played a bulk of the minutes. I feel like it's obviously it doesn't matter that we don't really have a true like 2 ball handlers in the starting lineup. Maybe McNeely can turn into that. He had 7 assists in this one, but I just want to maybe jog up a conversation about that because I found it interesting when I heard it.
Here's my beef with that statement is that in both of these years, Tristan Newton, who was our most outstanding player last year and a huge contributor 2 years ago, was widely scrutinized for not being a ball handler, not being a point guard. that first year that we went and won the national championship, he was, that was his biggest criticism was that he wasn't a true point guard. And what were we gonna do in March and when we needed a guy to bring up the ball? And I mean, obviously he proved those doubters wrong, but I feel like it's weird to kind of look back and be like, oh, we had two true ball handlers. When I don't really think that was the case. I feel like Newton was more of a shooting guard that first year. And I mean, even Haas, who didn't play effective minutes, was more of a ball handler. I think last year he kind of, took into his own that point guard role and he had great backup with Castle, but I really feel like that was the first year that that happened. And going back to it, you'd have to look a long ways for those two true ball handlers. I don't think this is anywhere out of the realm of Dan Hurley, this year's team. I think you have Hassan Diarra, and I think that's all you need. If you can turn solo ball into at least a competent ball handler, or at least turn Aiden Mahaney into a competent ball handler, which he has not been, but if you can, develop those skills, then I feel like you're going to be just fine. If we go ahead and we win the national championship this year, we're not going to be talking about that. We're not going to be talking about, oh, was Aiden Mahaney a true point guard? They're just going to give him that credit because they found success. And I really feel like that's kind of what Hurley has been known for, finding success. And the players reap the benefits. If these guys don't go back to back, I'm telling you, Cam Spencer is not an NBA draft pick. Tristan Newton is not an NBA draft pick. Adama Sanogo is not in the G League. It's just how it works. And I give a lot of credit to Dan Hurley for kind of taking what he has and making the most out of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would necessarily say that we had two, complete ball handlers because you got to think if Tristan Newton wasn't on the team last year, who would have played point guard? And I don't think Stephon Castle could have played. I don't think Cam Spencer could have played it. Were they very good at handling the ball and making plays? Yes. But I wouldn't say they were true ball handlers. Hassan Diarra is a true ball handler. There's no doubt about that. Tristan Newton last year was, but I don't know. I wouldn't say that they were necessarily true ball handlers, but I also don't think that, you need to have what that team had last year. These are two completely different teams. And even the first one, you can make a case that all five of them could handle the ball. You had Adama Sanogo dribbling through the paint to get to the bucket. 6'9" point guard. You can make the case that anybody in that starting five was a ball handler. But I don't see the real need to make that a conversation. Especially when you have guys that don't necessarily watch UConn regularly. Obviously Doster does, but Fanta obviously knows about us, but doesn't watch us really like regularly, like UConn fans do. And then I don't think Randolph really does either. But I don't think that you need to really make that statement. But either way, I feel like we don't need to have a true secondary ball handler like that because this team's operating just fine right now with one.
And if you look back on these past 2 years, in my opinion, our best player was the big man in the middle. Last year, Donovan Clingan really changed the game. He, was unbeatable in the middle there. Zach Edey, I would say, got the better of him in the national championship game, but that was kind of the plan. They wanted to just kind of contest without fouling, but all the way through that run last year, nobody could beat Donovan Clingan. I look back to that Illinois game, and that to me was his most memorable game as a Husky, where they just kept going at him, and he would not foul. He just kept playing fantastic defense. I think he finished with like 7 blocks. But the year before that, the game ran through Adama Sanogo, who once he got the ball in the post, that possession was over, and he was finishing with 25 and 10 every night. So, it's not an issue. It definitely is not an issue. I feel like we're starting to see these flashes out of Terrace Reed, these Adama Sanogo type flashes. I don't think he'll ever be the type of player that Adama Sanogo was, but now thankfully we have a top 10 recruit, and his evil version of himself and Alex Caravan, and they're fantastic, and Hassan Diarra does the job that he needs to do, and he feeds the guy he needs to feed. So I would not look at this like an issue at all. I think that Dan Hurley has, built a sort of scheme here and a system, and I think he's going to make it work.
Maybe Terrace could take that next step and be the lead guy on another title team. But yeah, I mean, Matt, you were mentioning a few minutes ago about like competent ball handlers. Like it doesn't matter if Mahaney is doing a national championship. I feel like we have a competent ball handler and a name I'm going to talk about next. The last point I mentioned I had too. Ahmad Noel has pretty much disappeared from this rotation. He was injured. He missed, I believe he wasn't healthy for the Baylor game, but he dressed. The Texas game, he did not dress. They said he was good to go for the Gonzaga game, didn't play, and he hasn't played at all in any of the Big East games. What's your guys' thoughts on that? I see you both raise your hands pretty quickly, so there's definitely a lot to talk about. I don't want to say I'm not surprised, but I feel like in the games that he played, he definitely showed some flashes of a guy that can at least give you, I guess, Mahaney minutes, which is 3 minutes, which that'll change. But you see what I mean there. A handful of minutes, see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this short because I feel like a perfect comparison. I feel like right now Amon Noel is sophomore year Samson, where obviously he's shown flashes. Samson was in the starting lineup the first game of that season and then got hurt and didn't really come back till January. But he got cleared to come back way before that, and we didn't need him. And I feel like that's the way it is right now with Amon Noel. Obviously Samson this year got hurt, came back the next game because we do need him. But I'm not saying that Amon Noel isn't an important player on this team. He's very good, very skilled. I think he's going to be a fantastic, real Big East point guard. But I just don't feel like there's a real need to rush him back. Let him get better in practice. Let him keep going up against these guys. You don't really want to throw a freshman like that right back into the pond, especially after getting injured, because he was injured. He sat out those 2 games, well, more than that now, but I just feel like it's kind of that situation where it's not like a necessary, like, we need him back as soon as possible because he's going to completely change the dynamic of this team. I feel like it's just, you know, not playing because he's not playing because he's not good. That's not what's happening. I feel like it's just a coach's decision. Maybe they think that he's cleared to play by the doctors, but not really cleared to play by the coaches. I don't really know what it is, but if I had to compare it to something, it would be the sophomore year of Samson. But we'll see him back out there, and he'll be making great plays for us down the stretch this year.
I have a little bit of a comparison too, and in my opinion, he looks a little bit like last year's Jalen Stewart. He is bigger than a freshman, stature wise. He's only 6 foot tall, but he's a big guy, and he is better than an average freshman. And I feel like it's bad culture wise if Hurley were to take him and play him over Aiden Mahaney, even if in just 3 minutes, because Aiden Mahaney has, a little bit of a college basketball legacy here. At St. Mary's, he wasn't a slouch. He averaged 14 points a game twice. And he came here with the expectations of being one of our better players. And that just hasn't worked out. And I feel like this is kind of a little bit of a testament to Dan Hurley's belief in Aiden Mahaney. Because if he really didn't believe, Noel would have taken that spot weeks ago. And this wouldn't really be a conversation. But I feel like Hurley kind of, in a way, has to kind of tend to his veterans, even though not for him. Mahaney is a fantastic player, and it's there. It's a matter of, doing the right things for him, getting him in the right places, and getting his mind in a better place. Um, Noel, I feel like will kind of break into that rotation come the end of the season when you need spark guys off the bench and you don't know where that's coming from. Um, Kind of like Jalen Ross did last year. That being said, I feel like next year I wouldn't be surprised if he started. That might be crazy to say, but barring any huge transfer that we get, he's our next option. I mean, Mahaney, I'm hoping they switch into that too. He'll probably come off the bench again if Solo stays, and then where do you go from there? I mean, you don't have any other transfers to bring in. I feel like he'll be that starting point guard for us next year, and you need him to get reps in. And what a better place to do it than MSG in March, honestly.
And I'm gonna round out the comparisons here. I kind of see a little bit of last year's Solo ball because Solo, when after Castle went down, entered the starting lineup. He made, I believe, 10 starts, close to that number if it's not exactly 10. And then he was not really in the rotation at all in Big East play. He played at the end when we were up by a bunch, or I think he may have had a couple of sparks here and there. But he really didn't play much at all after starting 10 games, which you don't see very often. I feel like a guy who starts all these big non-conference games, like the game at Kansas, he did well against Carolina at the Garden. Just to go non-existent in Big East play is kind of rare, I feel like. I'm not saying Noel is going to go non-existent, but it's kind of a similar situation where they needed him more in the non-conference. Like he played, I think, 17, 18 minutes in a game out in Maui. But I mean, it's a little different because there wasn't an injury then. Like, there's no guards that were injured when Noel was playing more. It's just the fact that he got injured. And now he's maybe fallen a little behind. But like you said, both of you guys said, I'm very confident soon we'll see him back in the rotation. I don't think it'll be as large of a role as people may think. I know a lot of people thought he could potentially be starting at point guard this season. I didn't see that. I feel like Hurley, unless you're like a really really good recruit or a guy that really fits the system, which I'm talking like Noel doesn't, but he does. You know what I'm trying to say. But I feel like I'm thinking of like freshman year Rasul Diggins. Obviously Noel much more talented than our buddy Sewell, but he didn't really play at all. Samson Johnson as a freshman didn't play at all. Really, those two were the duo, kind of like Noel and Abraham are this year. But either your time will come or you'll find your time elsewhere. Samson's time came. Rasul's at UMass averaging an empty 15.
And I mentioned kind of that point guard position for next year. I wouldn't be surprised if the same exact thing happened. You have four talented players coming in, none of which are point guards. You have Braylon Mullins, who's more of a two combo guard, Darius Adams, and he's a bigger guy. I'm sure he'll kind of look like a little bit of a Steph Castle out there, and then the rest are forwards. So you're gonna need to figure this out, whether, Hurley has a plan for next year, which is impossible to do because you have not seen these guys play against your guys yet. You need to get Noel minutes and you need to kind of prep him for next year. And I kind of think that's what he did with Stewart last year, where he wasn't sure where those minutes were going to go, 2 through 4. So I mean, he got Stewart ready, and I mean, he's been a productive player in his minutes. So I would not be surprised if Noel came in towards the end of the year and got 10 minutes ish a game.
This went on a lot longer than I thought it would. I like the conversation. I feel like it's really good. But now we're finally moving on to this latter half. It won't be a half. I sure hope it won't be a half, or else this is our longest episode in a while. But we're gonna do, like I said, it's almost Christmas. I'm probably gonna release this either today, the 23rd, or tomorrow, Christmas Eve. We're gonna play a little game. There's some naughty and nice. Been a very eventful year for the Huskies, obviously winning that sixth title. We can go back all the way then if you guys want, or just focus on this season. But we're gonna pick one thing to put on our nice list and one thing to put on our naughty list for the Huskies. All overall, it could be more than just the players on the court. You guys will understand what I'm trying to say when we get into this. Andrew, you want to kick us off first? We'll do naughty list first. We'll all do our naughties, then we'll all do our nice. Just do it that way.
Yeah, I'm gonna start it off with the naughty and say the thing that made me get up out of my bed when I saw this notification faster than I ever have, and that's gonna be the Los Angeles Lakers trying to steal our coach from us. Um, I know obviously it's great for him to get that offer, but it scared me at first because you never really want to see that an NBA team, especially like the Lakers, offered your coach a crap ton of money, but obviously very happy he stayed. But you're gonna have to um, you got to check out that offer at least. But I'm going to say that is the naughty after the Lakers trying to make our summer worse by trying to steal our head coach from us.
My naughty is going to the region of Maui. This year, Maui really threw a wrench into our whole thing, coming off back-to-back national championships. It's really hard to choose something to be pessimistic about, and I feel like this year's team was entirely thrown to the wolves by Maui. We dropped all the way to 25 in the rankings, but outside of Maui, we don't have a single loss. So unbeaten on the Continental 48. The only reason that we're really doubted is Maui. Um, I want to see us continue to play well, and I never want to see us go to Maui again.
Yeah, I believe the stat I saw is 22 straight Continental 48 wins for the Huskies. But my naughty is just, it's not really UConn, but it's how the NBA works because obviously we have guys like Andre Jackson. He's a starter on the team that's won the NBA Cup. I don't know if we formally congratulated him on that, but that's obviously an accomplishment. Probably not as crazy as the finals win, but it's still cool to see. Jordan Hawkins is performing well. You got guys like Steph Castle, I believe is the betting favorite now for Rookie of the Year, Donovan Clingan. When he gets in there in Portland is doing well as well. But in the G League, I have these written down here. You got Adama Sudogo averaging 17 and 11 and a half. Cam, he only played 3 games down there, but he scored averaging 29. Obviously, buffed up because he had 51, but he's averaging 29 and he can't crack the rotation in the NBA. James Bouknight is averaging 16, 5.5, and 4, and he's not on an NBA roster. Tristan Newton, 17, 7, and 6 averages, and he's he barely plays for the Pacers. He only plays a couple garbage minutes here and there. Obviously, it's a very talented league, but I feel like these Huskies are proving that they deserve to belong at least a shot at rotation minutes. Cam, I believe, played one game where he played double-digit minutes and put up double-digit points. He scored 14. So give these guys a shot. That's all I'm asking. That's my naughty list. And we'll move on to nice. Obviously, a lot more to choose from for the nice. Either you guys want to kick us off?
I'm going to start off with the nice list being, obviously two national championships, but the transfer portal. We've talked about it a lot over the past however long. We haven't had many misses. The only miss that we're really looking at here is, currently Mahaney, but I feel like that will change. But all the names that Hurley has been able to bring in to bolster these rosters, it looks like he did it again this year, and something I'm very grateful for, the transfer portal.
My nice is actually going to kind of dig a little deeper, and it's something we haven't really talked about because on these two national championships teams, we had two different sets of family members win a championship together. We had Dan and his son Andrew Hurley, and then I feel like the less talked about one is Hassan and Mamadou Diarra. That's just on my nice list because I think that's really awesome. I mean, there's nothing better than winning a championship with some in general winning a championship, but winning a championship with a family member on the team as well. I mean, it really doesn't get better than that. So that's definitely what's on the top of my nice list.
Yeah, Mamadou. I know I'm talking about your guys' as you don't have to talk about mine, but Mamadou I feel like is a guy that say we were to lose a guy like Luke Murray or Kamani Young, or I don't know if anyone would want Tom Moore as a head coach at this point. No offense, coach. But Mamadou's the guy I feel like that could step up and maybe be an assistant, a full-time assistant. I feel like he's got to be almost next in command. But yeah, I'm rambling on. My nice. I'm gonna go with the sophomore class this year because pretty much all four of them easily could have left to go to another school after not really playing at all outside of Jalen Stewart playing maybe a handful of minutes off the bench in the tournament. None of them played at all in the tournament. They could all easily say, I'm going to go to another school, maybe a slightly smaller school. I'm going to get my 25 to 30 minutes a game. I'm going to average these points, do this and that. But they all stayed. I feel like I made a prediction at some point on this podcast that they all would not stay. Now Solo Ball is averaging double figures. Jaden Ross is impactful off the bench. Jalen Stewart is growing into his role, and even Yusuf Singare is doing pretty well when he gets thrown in there. So I'm just very grateful that the sophomore class stuck together. Obviously, had to lose one, Stephon Castle, but I'm fine with that. And he was a national champion. But yeah, I definitely, if I had to choose something for the nice list, is that those sophomores stuck together and then trying to win another. All right, you guys got anything else from this loaded episode? I don't either, so that'll do it. Next time you hear from us, we'll probably, well, not probably, we will be doing our 2024 trivia. If you guys remember from last year, I believe Matt was there. I don't think Andrew was able to make that one. We had a couple of special guests. Maybe we'll have special guests again. Maybe we won't. You guys got to find out, but it'll be a lot of fun. It'll probably come out New Year's Eve. It'll be a recap of the entire calendar 2024 year for the Huskies. So look forward to that. Maybe we'll sprinkle in a preview of DePaul as well. Maybe not. But thank you guys for listening to this one. And Matt, you got a word for us? I know this is a longer episode. You got a word for us to comment?
Um, Let me think.
This is
Been here
easy.
for we've been here for a while. It's easy. What do you think it should be?
Merry Christmas.
Oh yeah, I guess that is. But I feel like that's easy. I feel like people might comment that anyway. I feel like people might comment it anyway. So maybe we could maybe we could comment a little bit of Saint Hurley. There's Saint Nick, Santa Claus. Our Santa Claus, since he's come to UConn, has been Dan Hurley. So if you want to comment a little bit of thank you, Saint Hurley, for all that Dan has done for us over the past 2 years, feel free.
There you go. If you're still listening, still watching, comment on the YouTube. Thank you, Saint Hurley. And thank you guys for watching.